Well, welcome everybody to this second session of Meet the Experts, dedicated to the export strand this time round. So 2 days ago we had the digital one. Today's session is dedicated to export, and then on Tuesday we'll be going through the live venues side of things. So I will ask you all, if possible, for this session for the moment to mute your microphones, if possible. I can see a few. Wonderful, that's great. But you will have the chance to unmute further down the line with all your questions for Virgo. So for those of you that are maybe either new and haven't attended one of these capacity building sessions before, I'm just going to start with a quick run through of what LIVEMX is. We're going to go through the funding scheme, capacity building and eligibility factors, but this is just, the idea is to take up 5-10 minutes with this, because obviously we have a special guest today with us, which is Virgo Silva, who is from EME, and the research coordinator and expert joining us today to give us as much insights as possible on the export challenges and how to navigate around that with your application. So a quick run through to start for those of you that maybe haven't attended sessions before, which is very few because I can see lots of familiar names here, is the idea of the LIVEMX project was obviously to help support the European live music sector and beyond. Why do we say this? Because we're covering 3 different areas of the industry. So the program will be running over 3 years. We're already on the second call. The 3 calls for proposals, we're basically encouraging you guys to take on board the challenges and submit projects to address these different challenges. So there's 2 different components to LIVEMX. On one hand, we obviously have the funding scheme, but the other side is the capacity building scheme, and that's what we're actually doing today. We've been doing in the information sessions, and we'll be doing also in the 3rd wave of open call. The different partners involved in the consortium of this LIVEMX project is Innova, EME, which is the European Music Exporters Exchange, Live DMA, and obviously this is a project which is funded by the European Union. So talking about the funding scheme, obviously, I think we're all aware now with these different sessions is that we're covering 3 different areas. So music export, live venues, and digital circulation. So the idea is we will have available €4 million of funding, and we have 3 different grant categories. We have the 20,000, 40,000 and 60,000 euros. The objective over this period is to cover 90 projects. And as mentioned, we have 3 open calls. So these 3 open calls, obviously we've had the first one, and I'll be revealing a few results about that shortly. We opened this second call on the 29th of April, which is open until the 24th of June. And then the next open call will be in November. Okay. The capacity building, as mentioned, we ran last week the information session, which you have available on our website right now, which is livemx.eu. And you can also find other materials that may be useful for the application process for you. We will be having these meetup sessions dedicated to each area. I'm really thankful that we have Virgo joining us today to talk about the export side of things, And in phase 2, we will be having some network activities amongst the projects that have been selected. So as mentioned, this is where we're at now. We are in open call number 2. Just a quick reminder of the deadline, which is the 24th of June to submit the project proposals. So from this very first open call that we had, we were really happy with the number of applications we had, which were the 249 different applications. Here you can see the different areas that they were covering. So we actually had, for this specific conversation that we're having today, 107 applications for the music export, but also 21 digital and export linked. What we can see is the result has been we've selected 25 different projects by an external jury. So the consortium isn't involved in selecting the projects, which I know tends to be a question that comes up a lot in these sessions. We do and have selected an external jury from the first open call, and they will be judging all the way through the 3 different open calls, the projects that you are submitting. So out of these 25 selected projects, we've had 11 from live venues, 10 are in the export field, 4 of which are digital, but 2 of these digital projects are from the export side of things. I'm happy to say you can consult all the information around these projects now on the LIVEMX website, so you can find out more about the individual projects that have been selected. A quick reminder, as we say, about why you should apply. Obviously, there's availability of funding of up to 100% of the project. The reporting process is also based on lump sum payments, and we're covering projects for up to 12 months. So anything around the application process, we're not going to be covering in today's session, but we do have a great tutorial video online, which was prepared by Patricia from Innova, which is a whole walkthrough of the application process. So I invite all of you that are actually interested to have a look at that. You will also see we've launched a poll at the start of the session to just find out a little more about you guys that are with us and which challenge your project is looking to address. So jumping onto the eligibility side of here, obviously, we've mentioned it does have to be a project that's from the live export or digital circulation side of things with a European dimension, and we'll dive into that in the next slide. Valid only for legal entities, mono-beneficiary, and goes without saying, sort of from one of the Creative Europe countries. But you can consult more details on the website here. So this was a question that came up a lot in the first open call, and we thought it was really valuable. And this was created by Corinne, who's here with us, the president of EME, to really explain what is European added value. And this is what we're going to be looking for on the projects that you're proposing. This is one of the key criteria, that the European added value of the projects is really the capacity to go beyond the national, regional, local level. Okay, so this is just examples that we've put here to really guide you in this space. It can be projects that include joint or collaborative activities in the main phase, or they can create results that are transferable to other countries and future implementers, or scalable across other European countries. Okay, so, but without further ado, I'd rather pass now the microphone to our expert, Virgo, who's going to be giving you a lot more tips and walking through challenge by challenge. So after each challenge that Virgo's going to be presenting, we will break out into Q&A of that specific challenge and look forward to your questions. So I'll pass the microphone virtually over to you now, Virgo.
Thanks very much. Good morning, everyone. I'll share my slides as well. I have prepared a few of them, but as Grace said, basically I'd like to go through challenge by challenge, explain what's written. We'll read through these descriptions as they are from our preparatory process, and then I'll add some of my own comments and ideas on them, how I interpret them, and then it would be great to, after every challenge, to take your questions and see how the discussion goes around them. I'll do a few preparatory comments, but just for background, I'm the research coordinator of WIMI, the European Music Exporters Exchange Network. And my background before that was I started and managed the Estonian music export organization called Music Estonia. Logically, since I moved to Brussels in 2020, where I'm residing now, and I'm currently a researcher and a consultant in the space of music policy making. So I was involved in the preparatory process for LIVEMX, which included a consultation process of experts in each of these fields that these projects are focused on. And what I'm talking about is this kind of my interpretation of what emerged from that consultation process. So it's not like I sat before the projects opened and came up with what I think are the challenges in the field of export. It was rather a filtering process of quite a few people providing various sorts of input, many of them are running export organizations, but there were also others, just professionals from music, management agents, etc., etc. Okay, so here's my few slides. and few comments to prepare. Let's see. Yes, that should be mine. So first off, I'd like to draw your attention to this idea of thinking in terms of impact. So what can we think about the impact that the projects can have? And I've made this sort of helpful heuristic scheme to point out three different types of impact that we can have with a project, and these correlate to also our European Music Expo strategy, which I will show you in a bit, at least some of the keywords from there. Basically, on that graph, as you see, the vertical side is the intensity. So you can do projects that are really having intense impact on those who participate on them, which usually means practical hands-on stuff. But you can also do projects that have a really wide scope, but low-key impact. And so this is the three different types of projects you might have, or different types of impact. And I just want to explain this because I'll be using, or I'll be referencing these ideas throughout the discussion. So the widest scope of a type of a project can be one that is addressing the information and knowledge that is available. So the project can create new knowledge or curate existing knowledge in a useful way and make it widely available. Whether it's through an online resource, it's a well-written guide, a how-to or a tutorial video, whatever. I mean, on one side, it seems there's no shortage of that kind of material out there in the internet, but at the same time, for many topics, if you really want to find something useful, you might be sort of drowning in the ocean of noise easily. So these kinds of projects, they have low impact in terms of intensity, because you're just providing stuff for people to read and to, make use in their own learning, and you don't know how many of them will do it and how much they will actually implement it. But it also has a wide scope because you can really make it available for everyone. And potentially there's very many people who can make use of it from that knowledge that you create and information that you share. Then in the middle, you'll see what I've called skills development and training, which is much more participatory and hands-on. And therefore, of course, it can be much more impactful on those who participate. But of course, because participation requires a lot of resources and attention and so on, it probably cannot be as broadly accessible as, just sharing information would be. So that's kind of in the middle. You can provide skills development and training. It can still be fairly broad if you do it online, like if you do webinars and so on. But as we know, the more hands-on, the more physical you get, the fewer people you probably can accept into the activity. And so the more intense it gets, the narrower the scope of the target groups and how you can reach them. And finally, you can really test out new things by doing pilot projects. You can come up with a new model and you really test it, but it's very likely that you can only integrate a narrow group of people in there, because it would be extremely costly to do it. Something that is intense, that is really hands-on, really participatory, but then doing it for thousands. It just, we would require the budget size of Creative Europe or something. So that's why I've built these three types of ways of thinking about different projects or different ideas within a project. You can think about broadly providing information and also creating new knowledge and information for it. You can do skills development and training that can include a group of people. That these groups can be of different sizes, but probably, they have to be limited to some extent, because the timelines and budgets are quite limited in a LiveMX program. And finally, you can come up with a new idea and really do a piloting of that idea. But probably because it's intense and also resource intensive, you can only do it for, a limited number of participants. Now, it doesn't mean that in thinking about the project that you have to kind of pick either of them. I think one project can potentially combine several elements or even all of these elements. You might come up with a new approach to doing something that requires training, providing that training actually might be broader than the group of people who are part of a pilot. And finally, whatever you learn from it or whatever you create in the form of informational materials out of that piloting, you might share broadly. So one project might focus on or incorporate all of these different ideas, but can also be focused on one of them. And this corresponds to our European Music Expo strategy, which has the 6-step development path. And I've brought actually 4 here. One of them is learn, one of them is grow, and cross and rise, which are 2 different ones, but for our purposes, they're basically the same. Learn is all about making information and insights available. So that's kind of answering the broad challenge of whether there's good information available that people can find on their own. Grow is about providing training and providing skills development, which would require active participation. And cross and rise actually refer to actually doing export activities, actually doing tours, actually doing networking activities, etc. And the only reason we have 2 words for it, cross and rise, is because in our strategic framework, we have distinguished exporting within Europe and exporting beyond Europe. So it's like cross is about crossing borders in Europe, and rise is about rising to the global level beyond Europe. But, you know, from the perspective of an artist, of a music company, of a label, of an organization even, of course, that, you know, export starts when you're crossing the border from your own country to another one. And there's no clear border between whether the other country is in Europe or outside of Europe. The activities, the thinking, it's kind of similar and the same. And the reason I'm showing you this table is basically to link your thinking to our music export strategy and showing how these different types of impacts are linked also to these different areas of work that we have outlined in our strategy. And so the broad impact but low intensity one is really about learn, it's about providing information. And throughout these different topics, whether it's developing export through co-creation, or it's about promoting new music and artists in new ways, or it's about professional networks and new markets, it's really usually then probably around either guides that provide information how to do different things, or case studies that just provide good learnings and tips into how others have done it. Maybe we could think of tools that are more than just guides. I don't even have a good idea in mind. Maybe it's basically like even a good checklist could be useful. A tool can be a database of some sort, or a tool that can help you find and narrow down your search field when you're trying to find good partners, etc., or just information about opportunities. And that can be, you know, captured in a market study about a particular market, where the market study outlines what these opportunities are in that country, or it can be just basically a more like functional one, explaining what the current opportunities are out there in the fast-moving and fast-changing music markets, like, I don't know, music publishing, licensing, and so on and so forth. Learn is all about creating new information and making it public, and maybe helping making insights from that information. And as well, grow is usually all about training, and you can imagine training across all of these 3 themes, whether it's training around co-creation, but also maybe networking and business development that's built around co-creation, whether it's about promotion and distribution, or whether it's about networking and learning about new markets. All of those topics can be seen as an object of a training method or a format or a model that you can, because all of them, you know, require some sort of skills and experience and also guidance in gaining them. And finally, basically the space of actually doing export, that's where I think pilot projects can be really useful. It's not only about talking about doing something, it's actually doing something. And that's what we could call a pilot project because of the small scope of the program of LIVEMX. You can't do massive scale on a project, even in the biggest category of 60K within a 12-month period. So I think a pilot project is a good frame to think about it. So that's basically just for us to keep in our minds, that we can think about narrow or broad target group, and we can think about low or high intensity of the impact we can achieve with that target group, depending on what the project is about and what the engagement is about. Is it just providing information, doing training, or actually doing piloting? So let's go through the challenges. I'll read it with you, and then I'll offer some comments and insights, and then I'll pause my slides and we'll take questions, and I'd be very interested to hear from you what resonates and what kind of questions you might have. So the first challenge that grew out of this consultation program process before the program is about developing music experts through co-creation. And the text explains that excellent creative output is at the heart of any artistic success. I mean, that doesn't surprise us at all. But it takes knowledge, networks, and investment to get new music to audiences, especially in another country. Creative collaborations can be valuable pathways for artists to develop their international B2B connections and find and engage audiences abroad. So here we describe something more than just putting creatives together and creating new stuff. We're also talking about how it extends to the business level and how it can finally make its way to an audience. Now, however, artists and their teams themselves often do not have sufficient resources and professional contacts available to organize co-creation opportunities and connect them to professional partners. Both are needed to make long-term structural impact more likely. This is what we think about this challenge. And here I think, of course, on a very grassroots level or a very low-key level, artists today can hook up and, visit each other and make even across country borders and make music together. But it's really connecting this activity to the professional community, to the business side of things, that is probably very difficult for even, artists who are quite kind of doing well, but who might not have their professional teams around them. And that's the truth in many European countries. Here we have to keep in mind that from country to country, the situation on the ground is very, very different. In the bigger music markets that are more developed, like France or Germany or the UK, maybe not relevant here. I don't remember if UK is relevant in the context of LIVEMX. Nope. So France and UK and France and Germany, for example, big countries, very developed industries. It's very likely that if an artist is doing okay or quite well, they would have around them teams, management, a label, a publisher, etc. Whereas in many smaller countries, including the one where I'm coming from, Estonia, these industries are only developing. And so it's very common that you have an artist who's already doing quite well, but they lack all of this professional team around them. So it's like, if you look at their, like in terms of artistic sense, their success, they're, quite good. But then basically their ability to break through and make professional contacts around these activities might be limited. So the challenge here basically is to design efficient and effective approaches to cross-border co-creation and business development opportunities that would be accessible to artists and producers from all over Europe. And that might require regionally specific approach. So a few thoughts maybe to add context to this is, as I said, I think organizing co-creation for artists itself might not be that big of a challenge. It's about what comes out of that co-creation. If people come together just to create music, that's great. But what's the process for them to pick the best of that music they create and reach the audience with that music? What kind of partners do they need? Should they connect to publishers directly? Should there be some sort of middleman, some people who would help them to connect to publishers, even to pitch? Do they need more knowledge around how to even do it? Is the solution here to try and just get more professionals like publishers into the room with them to listen to that music? Or is there a more training and more knowledge development aspect involved before that even happens? Because if we're talking about emerging artists, it might not be that they are, coming together and creating straight away music that would, interest some developed, established publishers straight away from day one. So maybe there's a process in between of the music creation together and then connecting to an actually interested partner. maybe that's where a project could think about. And also, I think there's a lot to discover in terms of how it works in niche scenes and how it works in specific countries or maybe specific regions. As said, the added European value aspect needs you to think more broadly. You can't only concentrate on your own country and say, well, here we have this problem, we want to solve it. Whatever you come up with needs to be somehow either transferable to other countries by principle. It needs to engage partners from other countries in a way that would really, increase cross-border activity, increase cross-border partnerships. And that's the space of added European value. Or it might be something that's just so new approach that others can replicate later on. I mean, that's what transferability means. Or you can also think about scalability, where you're piloting something that has the potential to scale up later on. So it might become something much bigger. Maybe it's a format of doing things that you can do over and over again. Maybe it's a format that you do and others can start doing as well. And so the format kind of builds up and scales and so on. I mean, it's really up to you to think about. And also maybe it's about critically reviewing and thinking, what is a co-creation process? Like if we get people in the room and call it a songwriting camp, what are they exactly doing there? Whose briefs are they working on? There's a lot of this happening out there, but mostly when it's very effective, there are quite high-level professional partners involved, like labels and publishers. They have fairly specific briefs. They know what they want, so they organize to get really great people in the room and to get the result they want. This might not be available for all sorts of less established artists, but also this might not be the format exactly for other types of music making. And so what does co-creation mean for these other types of music making, other niches and genres and scenes? Actually, it doesn't need to be niche always. It just might be a different type of music scene that is quite large on European scale, but is not built by creating, successful songs that can be released and promoted by good industry partners and so on. So I think there's a lot of room for discovery. I'm now stopping sharing. A lot of room for discovery in that space. And just to say that my Zoom asked me to confirm my speaking language because it says it sounds like you might have switched to a different language. Please update it so we can provide better quality transcription. It supposes I'm speaking in Italian. Is my pronunciation that bad?
No, it's not, Virgo. It's wonderful.
Okay, I'll convince Zoom that I'm trying to speak English. That's it. Okay, so I'd be interested to hear whether you have projects that you plan to make in that space, and if you have any questions or also ideas. One thing, I promised to make a disclaimer, and I need to make it. So as you've seen the commercials on financial advice and medical advice, so I also have to say, whatever I'm saying, is my personal interpretation and my ideas, and you cannot rely on them later on to expect better results in your project writing. So if you do stuff that kind of is, supported by what I say here today and you won't get the funding, then it's not enough to say, but Virga said it's going to be great. So I'm just providing my take on this, and hopefully it will be insightful for you, but it will be faced with a totally different evaluation team, which I'm not part of. So just that, to put that out there. So any questions and any comments, on that front?
Well, thank you, Virgo. And I will say, if anybody does have any questions, just feel free to put their hand up and we'll go along in order and then just invite you to unmic. So if there's any questions specifically on co-creation, which is what Virgo's just been going through, then we're happy to take those on board. So, Katarina.
Hello. I would like to say we are a legal entity which operates mainly within the classical music field since its establishment, including classical music live venues. And we would like to apply with a musical project which includes performance of cantata oratorio work from the Baroque era by performers from Bulgaria and EU countries that have established traditions in the field of classical music here in Bulgaria and potentially in other countries as well. Would such a project be eligible and considered export? Meaning that they will probably include also workshops here and some kind of cooperation and co-working between the experts from Bulgaria and from other EU countries.
If I may take this one, or Virgo, do you want to take it?
Oh, go ahead, and I'll add mine.
Okay, if from what I understand here, it's mainly on the development of a one mono project, I would say, which I'm not sure would fit what we're expecting here. If you are, I mean, you're talking about workshops or things like that, what would be the aim of these activities? Who's going to learn what and all that kind of stuff? So maybe this could, on that specific area of Baroque music, could maybe bring something on a European level. But if not, in my opinion, this is not fitting the project.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
So,
thank you.
is your opinion too?
Well, I mean, I guess, like, of course, we need to know more about what exactly. So basically, I think always the first question is, what problem are you solving? What is the problem out there that this project will try to solve? And then we can see if that problem is kind of export development related or it's another kind of a problem. So if you're saying that you want to work in the field of Baroque music, where like some sort of cross-border activities must happen, and the question is what are these activities, what are they aimed at, and what is the outcome that you would consider like export development? And of course, you know, what is export development? I think we all understand it fairly broadly. It's about increasing the capacity of whether artists or music companies, music entrepreneurs, to work across borders. So if the result is that there are different Baroque performing groups in Europe that, because of the project, become, you know, find new audiences abroad, etc., etc. I mean, in theory, it would be export development. Then, of course, we would need to look at whether it also fits in these three challenges that LIVEMX has identified for export projects, because export development is way broader as a field. And I mean, certainly, probably it won't fit into the co-creation part, which we've discussed now, because I assume by nature you would be performing music that is already created. But, you know, maybe there's something about promoting new ways of promoting Baroque music performances, etc., etc.
Yes, we are planning to perform a piece of work that has never been performed before in Bulgaria, as well as since the musicians that we would like to invite from the EU countries to Bulgaria are professionals in the field of classical music. We would like our musicians to be able to improve and work with them on the basis of exchanging knowledge and developing more their skills in this field.
And this field would be the performance of Baroque music?
Yes, classical music, Baroque music, specifically for this project.
But this would be okay. What would be eligible with LIVEMX would be the capacity building part, which be the workshops and all that kind of stuff, not the creation itself, not the show itself, which is a creation, which is a unique sort of proposal of art, which is not here. But the learnings of the professionals on a specific Baroque aesthetic genres and way of of experimenting this kind of music could be part of this, but I don't think the live part would match what we
I
hear.
mean, I'll add to what Corinne just said. I think, I mean, these kinds of learnings about an artistic practice are certainly eligible technically, but if they are competing against projects that provide more export development related learnings, like how to build your career and how to do promotion if you're a Baroque ensemble, if you're a Baroque soloist, then I think the artistic focused learnings will not be as strong against some of the more export development related learnings. So in competition in the project evaluation.
Thank you.
Thanks for your question, Katarina. Do we have anybody else that has questions specific to the co-creation challenge? Feel free to put up your virtual hand. Or
real one. There was a poll I see, and I hope you all replied to the poll. What were the results? Were there any interests in co-creation projects?
So I was going to mention that. So as of right now, we have 19 individuals that have answered the poll. None have selected co-creation as their challenge of main focus. The next challenge that you'll be speaking of, Virgo, has the highest percentage of participants. So you might be a little bit busier the next round.
Okay.
So maybe we can jump onto challenge 2 already.
Okay.
And then we will have like a more generic Q&A at the end as well, in case you think of a co-creation question later on.
And also, I just wanted to say that don't be afraid. You don't have to disclose your project idea to ask a question. You can just ask it in a clever way more generally as well. Okay, I'll share my screen again. We move to challenge 2, which is there's not that much said in challenge 2. It's just in a way very broad. And it's about promoting new music and artists abroad in innovative ways. And the sole idea behind this challenge is the feeling among the many experts that for many independent artists and their representatives, whether it's labels or publishers, or also maybe management and so on who work with artists, that in Europe, the standard routes to market, whether it's through getting into radio playlists or playlists in the DSPs, the digital service providers like Spotify and so on, are the main ones that everybody's trying to promote stuff through. And these, of course, by nature then are totally overcrowded. And it's very difficult to make progress through these particular very maybe kind of traditional ways of trying to compete with everybody else in the most crowded channels. And the challenge, therefore, is to find new and innovative ways around the current standard paths of promoting artist repertoire abroad and transform passive listeners to become active followers and even super fans. And I mean, here I think it's the idea that the common ways are bottlenecks. There's massive competition there, and the question is how, if you're coming from, if you're like more of an emerging artist, or if you're a company working with more emerging artists, or you're coming from a smaller country that is, needing to build international profile really early on in the development of artists because the local market is just so small, then you will find it difficult in that space. And especially as we know, for example, that, where in big countries in Europe, you have the Spotify editorial teams and possibly other editorial teams of other platforms, then in smaller countries, you don't have them. So you don't even have the attention of the big platforms to build country-specific playlists and so on and so forth. So there's a need for other ways of figuring out how we could promote artists and repertoire. And of course, in the age of internet, we think that somewhere there's 1,000 fan community for all kinds of music in the world, and somewhere they're plugged online as well. The question is, how can we find them? How can we connect them? And also maybe offline. It doesn't have to be only regarded with digital promotion. In the end, what we want to see is that an artist connects to an audience, even if that audience is scattered around the world, or if that audience exists in a small city somewhere and can be found and connected. And I think if you try to break down what the challenge actually means, there might be all kinds of alternative ways of doing it. There might be many good ideas out there about how to promote yourself as an artist. Some of them might be scene specific. Some of them might be specific to the size of your audience. If you're very small, to a medium, to a really large one. And it's very likely that there's a ton of artists and music professionals who just don't have information about these ways. Maybe there are new tools out there that could be used, but people just don't know about them. Maybe there are techniques or strategies that can be used, but the smaller artists and companies don't have the money to buy a strategic consultant to help them do it, or to teach them, or do it for them. And so maybe there's a knowledge problem. Maybe there's also a training problem. Maybe there are ways of doing it, but you need training. You need to teach and try, and maybe you need to work with a professional. Maybe you need to build a program where less experienced professionals or more emerging artists get to work with more professional people who work in various marketing or promotion aspects, and basically just take their hand and teach them. Or maybe you just actually need to research and come up with a really innovative idea how to do it, and then you need to pilot it. So I think all of these are possible ways to go about it. I know that I'm not saying much detail here, but it's because I don't know either. I think that's why we flagged it as a challenge among the export development community, because we understand the need. We don't really know how to solve it, so we're hoping that you'll do it. So if you have any questions or ideas in that space, I'd be very happy to hear.
I just wanted to add something at this one, which may be really confusing, in the fact that we will not support individual artist development. So if it's an innovative way of making the promotion, and you pilot this on an artist, it will be about proposing a guideline, piloting, and a tool that you will have used an experiment there. And it's the how-to that would be what LIVEMX would support, but not the development of the mono artist development.
Yes, that's the added European value here again.
Do you have any questions for Virgo on this? I know Patricia mentioned that we've got quite a lot of interest in this specific challenge, but as Virgo mentioned, you feel under no obligation to reveal your project. Find a creative way of asking the question.
Also, you can just share if why you think that is a challenge. Well, maybe you have your own interpretation, or you can share how practically you are faced with that challenge, and that's why you think about it. Maybe that can be useful and helpful.
And if you'd rather not ask in public, feel free to put in the chat and we can address them as well, either now or at the end.
Maybe I'm speaking Italian after all, and everybody just understands what I'm saying. Yeah, don't be shy.
Elena, did you have a question then? I just spotted you on mic.
No, not really. I just wanted to say that the presentation is so clear. That's why we don't have questions at this moment. I mean, if your expert could just keep going, and then perhaps we'll have something to ask at the end.
Wonderful.
Okay, I can keep going. That's always a good getaway from a question, though. Okay, let's go through the final one, the third challenge as well, and then let's see if you have ideas to share. So the third one is, of course, very common, and it's something that all the export development community people, including export organizations, but artists and their teams, understand and know very well. And I think it's a large area of very different topics. It's about developing the professional networks and also understanding the new markets. And here, actually, markets might mean physical markets, like geographical ones, like new markets, as in Germany, if you've never been there, or South Korea. But you can also think markets in terms of other concepts, like some people I've known have, I think, said in a nice way that the digital is its own market. You can think of the digital as a market. And there are also markets in terms of the specific way you work, like maybe the market of creating new music for media in South Korea. That's a market. So there are different levels and different ways of thinking about the markets, and getting, knowing them and making sense of them, and creating new knowledge about them. And we've described this in the following way. I'll read it through with you, that there are increasingly many professional networking opportunities, and I'm sure you are aware, like showcases, conferences, trade fairs, trade missions are being done, maybe more and more. And these are taking place both in Europe and internationally. And navigating them effectively can be a serious challenge for artists and professionals, especially if you're kind of new. And there are many challenges related to this, how to navigate these events in a way that makes sense and bring good results. Whether it's about attending large and well-established or small and niche-oriented conferences or trade missions, artists and professionals need information about markets and industries that they target, and skills and know-how of professional networking, and effective curation with access to relevant contacts. And this can be costly and especially unaffordable for those coming from smaller countries and less developed music ecosystems. I think there are several things to say about this. So as I've said, information about markets and industries might sound like this general knowledge. And of course, there needs to be a base of just understanding how the music business works, like what's publishing, what's management, and then how it all works. That base level understanding is, of course, necessary as well. But actually, of course, we need to build on it. So if we're talking about the US, and the US is just too big of an entity to think about as a music market, you might talk about the music market for jazz in New York. I mean, that's a big enough market to think about even as a separate one, and have a strategy to how to navigate it, or maybe New York as a city, and then also the surrounding cities as well. At the same time, of course, if you really build up your partners in New York, they might represent you for the whole market of the US. So that's what makes it complex. It's at the same time, it's kind of big, and at the same time, you have to be very focused on niches, industries, and places. And that takes a lot of information to understand. A whole other topic is how to professionally network. And I think that is a skill that we sometimes don't think enough about, especially if you're a younger person in the industry. Then the fact that you might not know how to network, that you might not know. I mean, some people are just good at talking to other people, but just talking to other people might not necessarily lead to good results out of networking. And that might be a skill that people need some training in, or they might need like even psychological support in creating environments where networking happens organically and in a way that doesn't take a lot of effort and energy, and sort of overcoming barriers from persons. And a key element there, of course, is sort of the effective curation and access to contacts. And I think this is something that all the music export organizations as well think about, how to create situations where there's a lot of people in a big room or in many small rooms, that is effectively done in a way that the people who need to meet. And that's actually it's a combinatorial exercise that is very difficult to pull off, because you cannot really regulate it a lot. I mean, maybe we've all attended speed meetings, and I've organized speed meetings in my life quite a few times. And in the end, we gave up the format because we realized that we are unable to help the one side seeking the attention of maybe an agent, maybe a label, etc. We can't train them enough. So we had to seek other formats that would be more useful, more effective, because it's great if people just exchange business cards, but if you don't know how to pitch, if you don't know how to follow up or what to make of it, it's just not going to produce good results. And that way we learned speed meeting works for more experienced professionals who already know what they're doing, but maybe not so well for really beginning professionals. For example, just sharing my own experience from our work. And so finally, the challenge is to provide artists and professionals regardless of their background and country of origin, inclusive, accessible, and relevant professional networking opportunities and insights on the target markets that are sensitive to their level of experience and skill, and also nurturing local and regional or genre-specific networks. And I think, we want it to be really inclusive in the way we word this, and we want it to be explicit by drawing the attention that it's just not just a broad sense of networking, but actually, yes, there are different types of scenes that might want to have scene-specific events or formats or methods, that there are different levels of capacity, different levels of development that we need to address. And also that in some parts of Europe, developing stronger regional networks might be the bigger missing element. Then, we have the big events like Reeperbahn or Eurosonic or Jazz Ahead or LIVEMX or Classical Next. Maybe it's not that big, but it's one of the few for the contemporary music scene of its kind next to Yama. But these events might be overwhelming to those professionals who are kind of new. And I'm not saying that they shouldn't go there, but very often they go there and then just don't get a good result. So maybe there's work to be done sort of on a medium level and sort of regional level and so on. We don't know. So if you're thinking about project in that space, I think one of the elements can always be sort of mapping out the specific problem you're trying to solve more specifically and more exactly, because us, when I'm saying us, like for example, members of IMI, the music export organizations, we intuitively understand the problem, but very often we also lack the knowledge in specifics, where exactly in that region, how it actually exists, that problem, and who is missing and what is not being done and so on. So yes, I think maybe a few comments about these events that you might keep in mind that I've picked up when I've done analysis of these professional events is there is this systemic asymmetry between the many people there trying to sell, so like they're pitching their projects, their artist projects or their catalogs, and the very few people who actually have the ability to buy. And very often we talk about it like this is a problem of this event, this event is not good at getting buyers and so on. But I mean, this asymmetry between many people wanting to sell and very few people actually being able to buy, this exists across the whole industry. This is the baseline. This is how reality exists. And the question is, how can we, in those terms, it's not about just getting more buyers involved in general. It's about how to make better curated ways of getting their interests closer to each other. And whether it's a thing of training, whether it's a thing of more, directed curation, etc., is an element. And also, I don't want to, by referring to like all these ways you can try to curate, I'm not trying to say that we have to be over-regulating networking and contact building between different people, because I think this so-called serendipity or the element of luck and randomness in just meeting people and striking up a conversation and then 7 years later ending up doing a great project with those people cannot be taken away. It needs to exist in the space of networking. So it's not about super regulating and super curating, but finding good and effective ways of helping those people meet who should meet. Okay, I think I've said enough about this third one as well. So if you have any questions or comments, let's hear them. I've been so clear again. Tim.
It seems like that, Virgo. Oh, we've got a question from Tim.
I'm just considering that, like, I'm working for a business, music business network. How accessible does it need to be for artists, or is it okay if a project would be directed towards the artist partners only? And how much do you think do we need to incorporate partners from other countries, or is it okay to be scalable? Or is it better to include other people and also make it accessible for those people to apply for any activities? I think
So-
that's like, I'm considering delegation trip to other places, maybe with a pre-trip to curate those effective networking sessions. So like that's roughly how I would formulate my thoughts. Yeah.
So two questions. I think, I mean, I let Corinne and others to comment on that, but I don't think a focus on artists is necessarily, you know, it's not a must-have. I think good networking needs to happen for all of them, for artists, but also for those professionals representing artists. And I think, especially on a certain level of business development, it'll be the professionals who talk to each other, not necessarily artists. So I think there's a place for all combinations on all levels in that round for sure. And secondly, I'm not sure I fully understood. So I think it's good if the project is clearly sort of doing something cross-border. But yes, that of course you like whatever you do, you can try to play the scalability card. You can say, you know, we're doing it in a small way and in a very focused way. And the value here, the added European value here is we're coming up with a new way of designing events that we are going to share with the world. And hopefully others will also do these new kinds of events. And that's going to create a lot of value for across Europe. So I mean, that argument is valid, that can work. But I think it will be easier to make if you still have also cross-border activities in that pilot that you're doing. Because if it wouldn't, I think that would, you know, weaken the proposal.
Yes, regarding the European added value, I think the scalability is more related to maybe the experimentation of capacity building or the live venues also. Regarding exports, all the projects that would benefit only to one country professionals or artists will not be competitive, I would say. We have a lot of them coming. They were all really good value. We had to refuse projects that were scored more than 90%. Okay, so the competition is high. So if the benefits goes just to one country, this is definitely something that could be funded nationally, even if you're in a country where maybe there is no fund for that. And this is a pity, but this is not what LIVEMX is supposed to fill as a gap. You know what I mean? So if you are in a country and you've got this delegation coming from I don't know where, and you organize this networking in a specific way, well, open it to the other professionals or the neighboring countries that could also benefit of that proposal.
Maybe I'll
add
one more comment to this. You know, we talk about new ways a lot, and we kind of underline this innovative aspect and so on. And I fully understand that in some regions in Europe, for example, just doing a fairly straightforward trade mission from one country to another, or just gathering professionals from several countries that are neighboring to a place and making networking that has never been done before, can be really, really valuable and really, really needed, because it's never been done before. And there's nothing really innovative about this, but it needs to be done in that region. I think if a proposal wants to do something that is in its nature is not something extremely new, but you can convince, or you can convincingly show that this is new for that area, for that region, and then those countries coming together, or that scene, or that niche, then I think that can still be a strong proposal, even if, you know, what you're doing is kind of straightforward networking.
Thank you.
So I think we've got a question from Lena, and then maybe Helena. I could see Lena.
Hi. Yeah, my question will kind of follow what Virgo just said. I'm from Riga, Latvia, and I represent the network called NERDS. We started it in 2022, and it's an abbreviation of North European Resonance and Dissonance Society. So my question is it is it worth applying for LiveMX with a network which is already existing if we want to continue to take care of this kind of small music ecosystem of experimental, innovative and avant-garde music from Nordic and Baltic region? Or it should be something new we have to apply with, and it can't be really like continuation of this network activities?
No, I mean, I don't know, and this is of course a question to the evaluators as well, and in the end, the competitive evaluation. But to me, it sounds like it doesn't matter if you have the network already before, and really cool name, by the way. It's rather, are you solving a problem that you cannot solve on your own? And can you convincingly show that even though you've created this network, that there's basically no resource in that network, which I can totally believe. And there's no resource available on national level to help that network to do that work, and somehow show in your proposal that this particular project from LiveMX would help you to do something that you otherwise couldn't do. And it also has all these elements of added European value because it's a regional thing, and there's a need for that kind of activity that you want to do, and so on. So I think it's kind of phrasing out and being convincing why you need LiveMX project to do it, why it really resonates with the challenges of LiveMX, and that basically without it you can't really do it. Just the fact that you've established a network doesn't mean that the network has any capacity of funding on its own, which I think
yeah, but if I can say something, if the network is already existing, it means that it can exist without the support of LiveMX. So it's about additional activities that you would then propose somewhere.
Yeah.
This is not a, because we will not last forever. You will not have every 2 years a LiveMX project that can fund something structurally. So I don't think it will pass through the jury members. You know, it's not something that would be sustainable in a long way. So it would be a specific activity that maybe could bring something. And if I understand well, the network is not just one country, is the collaboration between different countries, isn't it? Yeah. So,
yeah, it's now 7 member countries from Nordic Baltic region.
Yeah, so it's activities, additional activities that you're not doing so far, and so that you can test things that you could do together, so that to get ready to go to cooperation project on the Creative Europe program. Then this is the idea.
Yeah, or maybe then also show and convince your local national policymakers that what this network can achieve if it would have resources. So like doing this one-off project of specific activities can help you to prove its worth to also the national governments who, you know, by all rights should, you know, be maybe funding it then. Yeah, I mean, it's a nice thought, but I know how it is. It's
Thanks for your question, Lena. We've got
Thank
Helena,
you.
who was with us at the digital session. So fire away with your question, Helena. Do you want to just unmute?
Do you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Well, thank you very much for this excellent presentation. I would just appreciate some more comment on the distinction between these 3 challenges. So if I understand correctly, the first challenge is about creating new repertory through co-creation. The second challenge would be promoting artists and repertory, whether existing or new. And then the third challenge would actually be connecting people. Is that what, do I understand?
Yes, just to maybe to add on.
I would say no.
I mean, I'll add to that just simply creating new repertoire is not enough. That the challenge is connecting that new repertoire to audiences through business development. So it's about taking the next step. If the project is only about just creating new repertoire, it's not going to be very competitive. In the second case,
I understand that. No, I was just thinking about what would be like the main point of distinction between these 3 challenges, because we actually applied for the last cycle, for the previous call. And I think that where we failed was that we failed to make a proper distinction between these challenges, where we selected a challenge, but when reading the comments from the expert jury, that's where we saw some problems. So I'm really trying to understand what is the main point of distinction between these three challenges within this music expert strand.
Can I ask the question if you're really involved into export? Because if I mean I would say that these challenges are quite clear if you're really trying to develop.
Yes, well, I'm actually collaborating with another company who is the lead applicant here. So yes, music expert is not my main field of work. So that's why I'm trying to assist them with writing the proposal, because they don't have much experience with that. But then I don't have experience with music experts. So I'm sorry if I'm asking the obvious and taking your time, but I would just appreciate a comment from your side, if that's okay.
No, I think it's a good question. I think it's really important to try and distinguish between just creating new repertoire for a group of artists and then doing it in a way that has this added European value, or that basically creating, because you could say that just taking a group of professionals to another country might only benefit those group of professionals, but you have to then somehow convincingly show that there's a broader value in doing that. So right. I understand that this might be difficult to differentiate, or especially with the promotion one. It's just taking so taking an artist and just making a promotional campaign on its own will not be a strong proposal, because we don't want to just support regular activity of promoting artists or creating new repertoire, but it needs to be. It needs to be a way of doing these things that is more than just doing it on a regular basis for one artist. It needs to be a new way of doing it, or it needs to benefit more. So it's very often it's for that reason it's about the new way of doing it, because then you can test something. I think that's also might be a source of confusion, that in order to pilot something, you have to have like a concrete example to pilot on. And then it's like, of course, for that particular artist or group of artists or music companies, they are just doing what they're doing. But the project needs to show that it's a new way of doing, that you can share the results and so on. So I think that's where the difference is from just, creating new stuff, but organizing it in a way that others can also benefit and learn from it, and making it very explicit and very known about what the value offer is.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thanks, Helena. Do we have any other questions for Virgo, or generic questions on LiveMX while we're together? Yeah, that's a good reminder from Patricia there. So if you maybe think of questions after this session, you can always reach out via the generic email that we have, which Patricia just put in the chat, the general@livemx.eu email address. So feel free to connect there if you have any other follow-up questions. I will just give you a reminder, the next Tuesday, we will be having also the session on live venues. So feel free to sign up for that. So 11 a.m. on Tuesday morning. And for that, we will be joined by our live venue expert, and we'll be using the same methodology also as this session, where we'll address challenge by challenge and go a lot in depth about that and take your questions for that. So
yeah.
I
just now noticed in the chat that Underground Rock Festival has also made this point already, like nearly half an hour ago, that in order to do a project, a pilot, you actually need to use a particular artist case or a company case, and that's exactly true. But as I said, you need to then, for them, it's really great. They get to be a part of the project and be piloted on. But it's as a project owner, it's your job to convince that the benefits will be broader than just this particular artist taking a part of the project.
Thank you for clarifying that, and yeah, look forward to seeing you all in next Tuesday's session. The presentations will be available on our website probably by the time of next week. So you'll have all this pool of resources to go through, as well as a quick reminder of Patricia's great video that's available as a walkthrough of the whole application process. So I think if we don't have any more questions, I'd like to say a big thank you to Virgo for his time. I think it's great to have gone in so much depth, challenge by challenge, and hopefully this has been useful for you all with your project proposals. And we look forward to receiving all of those. And just a quick reminder that we do have an external jury, once again, taking care of evaluating all of your proposals. So, and deadline 24th of June. So thank you to you all. And this recording will be available on the website.